Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council on Monday, January 12th. It's 7 p.m. and tonight we're in committees and we will be having presentations from several guests with us tonight. We have the Transportation Committee, and one of the presentations we'll have is with Michael Hinton and Robbie Kamaruka from Burgess and Nipel. And then under Finance and Personnel Committee a little bit later, we'll be having information for the Athens County Convention and Visitors Bureau, and we have the Executive Director, Paige Alost, and Jake Sharp is with us tonight also from the Convention Bureau. So welcome, and we'll proceed with Transportation Committee. Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you, new president.
Thank you.
So Burgess and Nipel are our consulting firm that has worked with us regarding our parking garage, our municipal parking garage. And they've done a study and have been in conversation with us and would like to present the results tonight. So we ask that you come to the podium and they have a presentation for us. Thank you.
My name is Mike Hinton. Probably covered you. Put together a little presentation on parking garage repairs and of our plans for performing this work.
And Mike's area of expertise is structural, and I'm an electrical engineer, and I'm here mostly to talk about the elevator.
The agenda here briefly is a look at the existing conditions and a brief history of the parking garage, the proposed improvements with a few photographs we have. Council has copies of the report and cost estimate that we've done previously. It's parts are included in here. An estimated project cost and the project schedule, anticipated schedule of this.
That one is, and those aren't.
Do I need to signal these guys?
These aren't working and this is.
No, well, I assume that's
the only one that's going to work.
Okay.
They said they would take care of that.
There we go.
Now we got it.
Okay. We want to discuss the project briefly and why it's such a high priority. Council should consider it a high priority. There's a number of issues out there that need to be taken care of fairly soon. There's damaged concrete out there, the deteriorating deck coating, some drainage problems out there, elevator breakdowns and code compliance, non-code compliance, corrosion of the steel, steel items out there, some steel in the deck as well, and stairwell safety concerns out there. Brief history: the garage was built in 1970. It's a little over 40 years old. Major repair projects are about every 10 or 15 years. The last one we were involved in was in 2000. There was one prior to that in the mid-80s. Anywhere to 2015 was about another 15 years. The cost for the repairs in 2000, which were similar to what we're doing today, a lot of concrete repairs, deck repairs, some steel repairs, some code improvements, was about $1 million. The estimated cost right now for these improvements we've had outlined in our cost estimate is about $1 million for similar improvements, the concrete repairs, metal repairs, some plumbing repairs, with an additional about $500,000 for elevator rehab and an additional $500,000 for design, bidding, construction, inspection, construction services, related expenses. The elevator is a very expensive item. There's 2 elevators out there that are having some issues. This is a one-time event in the life of the structure. We think that it's worth repairing this equipment, replacing this equipment. We have about 20, 30 years estimated life of the structure remaining. Typically, concrete structures like that get 50, 75 years, so we're definitely within that range. Some of the proposed improvements we outlined: repairing the damaged concrete, repair the protective deck coating that preserves the concrete that's out there, the improvements in the top floor elevator lobby. There's water infiltration, there's some safety issues up there we'd like to take care of. The antiquated elevator system, I think it qualifies as an antique, it's 40 years old, 45 years old. Repair some stormwater damage where the stormwater exits out on Washington Street and some other areas within the garage. Painting all the metal items and putting waterproofing on all the brick masonry. We've included some photographs here of some of the issues out there. Some of these are in the report that council has. We've added a few other ones just to describe some of the items we have there. Don't need to explain any of these to what we're looking at. Some of the concrete, the reinforcing steel that's out here where the concrete's broken off. Corrosion, where the orange spots are, is where steel's exposed and corroded through water infiltration through the decks. This is a post-tensioning tendon that's in the deck. I think we discussed that at the last meeting briefly about the importance of these tendons and their supporting the structure. They're very need to be well taken care of. This one's had a little bit of rust and corrosion and broken some concrete out there. Deterioration of the protective deck coating in various places up there where the cars turn. Top deck where it's exposed to the weather is deteriorating fairly well. At the 6th floor lobby, we were talking about weathering. Wind and water blows through that door, underneath that door. We were talking about moving the door on the other side of the north face of that. Stairwell to let more light in there, a little more secure. Being exposed out there, and also putting a roof on there, a sloped roof. There's, from what I've heard, reports of people on the roof, which looks like a serious safety issue up there.
I'll talk about the elevators a little bit.
I'll let Robbie step in.
You're free.
Yeah.
The elevators a little bit. The equipment already is 45 years old, and the typical life of an elevator system is about 30 years before you start to need to replace some of the control equipment. Typically, motors and machines have a longer, more heftier life. They've been proposed as an option, but we think it's an option that you should do because you're not going to go back in and do those elevators again in the life of the garage. So we're recommending that the whole system be replaced. The only thing we're keeping are the actual physical box of the car. And you can see that it's just very, very old technology. They're mechanical relays that run the elevator, and the equipment that will be replaced will be basically, it's a PLC, it's basically a computer, and we're putting variable frequency drives, which improves the ride of the car and are more energy efficient. So we're killing a whole lot of birds with one stone. When we say the elevators are non-code compliant, it's not that they were built poorly when they were built. It's just that safety codes have advanced so much over the last 45 years, and the fire codes have gotten so much stricter. Some of the safety issues you're experiencing primarily are entrapment, especially in cold and damp weather, and that's always a risk to the people in the cars. Also for ADA compliance, there have been some improvements made, that are a step in the right direction, but doing this complete improvement gives us an opportunity to bring everything but the physical size of the car up to current ADA compliance. In the next photo, you can see, how some of the hoistway jambs and the doors are weathered, and that's just exposure. We'll make sure that we specify equipment that is the sturdiest that we can get with the current technology, to be able to withstand the weather and have a better, useful life. Does anyone have any questions about the elevator part?
So just a photograph of the storm sewer exiting out the building that's been had a steel plate on there for quite some time until we can get that fixed. Found the break in the line. This is just more drainage issues that we are obviously well seen from outside the front door here, I suppose. What that looks like in the wintertime. Paint peeling on the metal caps and railings and such around there, around the door frames in that west stairwell by the alley there across the street. The estimated project cost, the cost estimate we'll see here at the end of the presentation was also in the report that council has. The big ticket items is obviously the concrete repairs, the floor and the ceiling have the biggest quantities and will take the most biggest cost there. The deck coating repair is a big ticket item. It's very expensive, but it provides the most protection for the garage deck. It's from salts and water infiltration. It's causing the corrosion and the spalling of concrete. And of course, the elevator rehabilitation we talked about is a very pricey item. Just a note, we did all these repairs in last February as far as quantities. And we start construction hopefully this summer. We're at 15, 16 months away from where we did this survey. So there's a chance that those quantities and such will increase because we're going through another winter cycle that's not been, we're not sure what it's going to be like yet. It's been crazy. Freezing and thawing caused some of those problems, of course, and we got water infiltration through there.
But we do feel like we've put enough of a contingency.
We do have a contingency built in
the
there.
estimate, so.
Right, so that's in that estimate that you have. We'll see here in a minute also.
Do you want to talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah, so there's two approaches that we could take to this project. We could put both of the contracts and all of the work together, or we could do it as two separate projects. We're really recommending it be done as two separate projects. The reason for that is they're on two very different schedules. The elevator design can be done fairly expeditiously, but then there's a really long lead time to physically get the equipment here before the install can start, where the design of the structural rehabilitation is going to take a little bit longer, but the contractor can really hit the ground running. I think he'll probably be done before the elevator equipment even arrives. And then the other thing, that gives the city the advantage of you have a direct contract with two very different types of contractors. You don't have an elevator guy working for a structural rehab guy. So you have direct access, to the two significant people who will be doing the work.
I think, just to kind of clarify that a little, I think that's an important piece for the public to understand because the design of the elevator is an important piece. Mm-hmm. And I don't think people realize that all of that has to be made contracted. We have to have an RFP.
Well, and it will take, typically from the time you award a contract to an elevator contractor, it'll take about 6 weeks for them just to produce shop drawings for us to review. After we've reviewed the shop drawings, it takes 14 weeks, 16 weeks, something in that window, to fabricate the equipment at their shop. And then it's 8 weeks per car, and we're going to do one car at a time, so you always have one car running.
So, and it is just an important piece for people to understand.
Yeah, and from a technical perspective, it's nice for the city to have a voice directly to that vendor.
So once they're manufactured, it's 8 weeks to install.
Per car. Yeah, so we have a 16-week install time.
Since you're doing such a complete rehabilitation of the elevator, why keep the cars?
When you take, well, first of all, when you have to take the top off to get the cars out. But when you replace the cars, there's a funny little nuance in the elevator code. You have to bring everything up absolutely positively all the way. And by building code, if I was building that elevator today, the car would have to be bigger to be able to accommodate a gurney. And that means we'd have to make the hoistway bigger. So we're redoing the interiors of the cabs, we're redoing the doors, so it's just the basic physical structure of that metal box that's staying.
And obviously, if you cannot put a gurney in there, it still meets the requirements.
Right, because it's not a new elevator.
And okay.
Yeah.
It's grandfathered into the code. So, and like you said, that work is really a separate electrical and elevators are a very specialty thing. The guys are doing concrete and drainage work and painting or something they just don't. You're paying an extra cost for that guy to work under him, so.
Well, and if there was some kind of design, if there was a problem, you wouldn't want to
Go to the concrete guy to
keep
solve
right, exactly.
the elevator control problem. Right?
Okay.
So, like she said, that's a very smart way to do it. And that's what we did in the cost estimates. We did it two ways. We looked at that. We talked at our last meeting about doing it as two separate contracts, because that way that is a shorter amount of design time, can get out on the street and bid much quicker than the whole package. The project schedule, our design and bid in this, well, I don't explain all of it, but the design and bid for the concrete and general repairs we expect to take about 5 months, and the general construction of that about 5 to 7 months. I think we talked in our last meeting with council that we hope to get approval around mid-February with the number of required readings, I guess. We also talked about expected construction start date. May 4th, I believe, is close to when school's out. If you do the math there, doesn't quite work out. We don't have 5 months to do it. We have about 3.5 months to get it out and bid. We think we can do it. And as I said, it's a very tight schedule. So as Robbie said about the elevator contract, that's a much quicker item to get out, quicker than that. But the construction of that probably won't be until 12 months.
Probably,
December.
Yeah, probably
Probably in
won't start
December.
till December.
So we'll probably hit that when school's out again
Our next
in
break.
the winter break, which will give them a good time to get in there and get some of that stuff done. We'll still have one unit running all the time, except for maybe a very short time. But hopefully that'll fall within that time frame when they're off.
A couple of things that were brought up when we had a previous meeting. Somebody asked about electric charging stations, and we did some research. We looked into that. To install a dual station in the parking garage, and so that's one pedestal with 2 chargers on it. That's about $6,000 or $7,000, and we would put that as close as we could. We would locate those stations as close as we could to the electric room, just to shorten up the infrastructure that we have to put in. We also did some research about how people charge, and around the state of Ohio, the only people I found that are charging are Walgreens, and they charge 49 cents a kilowatt hour, and Campgrounds of America charges $5 an hour. Now, the city of Columbus, the city of Cincinnati, the city of Dayton do have charging stations. They charge for the parking, but they don't charge for the station, right? I talked to the director of sustainability at Ohio State. They have charging stations, and they had anticipated they were going to charge for them based on usage, but they haven't seen significant enough usage yet to set a rate. So they do anticipate eventually they'll charge. But typically, public charging stations, the owners of those stations aren't charging a fee to charge your car, unless you go to Walgreens. So. And we did look at the $6,000 to $7,000 is the level 2 charging station. It's the
240.
It's the 240. Oh, and there's enough electrical capacity in the city in the garage to support putting in some charging stations. So
That was one item. Another item that we talked about was better visibility in the stairwells for several reasons. We talked about adding windows, adding full glass doors, but looking at the code requirements there, windows, we're primarily talking about the west, call it the west stairwell along the alley back here across the street. But there's some issues in it. We can go and add windows facing the alley, but that doesn't really give you the security that you probably want, visibility that you want. There's not much observation there. any kind of windows in there are okay. On the other 3 walls, they have to be fire-rated walls. It was designed as a fire-rated enclosure. Since those are close to the occupancy of the building, you have to have fire-rated glass in there, which is very, very expensive. Not worth the money in our opinion. We did look at this 15 years ago when Ray had us look at that, and found out it just wasn't feasible then, cost feasible. We talked about in our phone meeting the other day about possibly removing the doors and making it an open structure. We went through the code review of that, and it's possible to do that if it was designed as a new garage, new structure, but being that it's already been designed and approved as a fire-rated enclosure, we'd have to get the fire department or code people to approve that change.
But in new construction, they can be open according to ORC.
Yes. We had some code paragraphs here, but if we do that, and somebody was going to talk to the fire department, I think, but I didn't make that call yet. Didn't even.
Okay. All right, thank you.
One of the issues about leaving that open, and Rob even said this evening, there was some possibly
The
some
handrails were icy.
icy spots in there.
Yeah.
That if it was open, and some of those doors are kept open anyway. You got to keep water out of there and keep icy spots out of there. Is another challenge. Adding extra lighting and surveillance may be another option. I don't know if there's thoughts on other options out there. One of the problems, the drainage problems there is water and snow blowing onto that sidewalk that's getting into that stairwell, causing some of the corrosion problems we saw earlier. It may be a way to protect that, to keep that out as well as help the stairwell. Included the cost estimate here for option 2. We talked about the 2 construction contracts, which seem to be the favored method to do this, to try and save time on the elevator project. This is also the same one in, well, I didn't get the changes to Paul yet, so we'll have this to you tomorrow morning. Do we have any questions to?
I guess what we're seeking is we have to get some information from the auditor's office about a bond, again, for this. We paid off the previous one, showing 0 debt.
Yeah.
We have some reserves. It looks like the mayor got some updated figures today. But
No, actually, this is Thursday.
Yes. But we, as you know, we don't have $1.9 million. So they'll have to run the numbers for feasibility in terms of a payback term. In addition, because of the structural deficiencies and it's just going to continue to degrade, we would be seeking suspension and emergency clauses, as it were, associated both with the design and engineering firm and with the contracting in order to, if we're going to do it this year. If we're not doing it this year, we'll probably be facing, would you estimate, anywhere from 3 to 5% increase in costs for next year.
As well as more degradation.
Probably slower degradation as well.
After reviewing the report, I mean, and I assume many of the council members have done that, I mean, it appears that we need to move on.
It's been 15 years.
Correct.
15 years. Looking at the meeting with the auditor Thursday, I guess it was, she gave us some initial estimates of 2014-15 resources. According to this, the receipts, let's see, the actual receipt, the projected carryover for this year, end of this year, will be about $388,000. Estimated revenue is about $280,000. So you start doing the math. So in theory, the estimated resources for 2015 would be about $667,000. But that, you realize we have operating expenses as well. If I look at the fund report, which we just got this morning, I know you haven't had a chance to look at it. I barely have had a chance to look at it. I'm looking at the yearly fund report ending December 31st. The actual receipts for this past year was about $288,000. The expense is about $213,000. So we run it pretty tight at that point. We have been adding money over time, but it doesn't give us $1 million. So the estimate there, again, this is at the end of December, is the unencumbered balance was about $390,000, almost $400,000. So you start looking at this and saying, okay, we really would have to have a robust debt schedule to make it work. Okay, just so you know what the limitations are.
And of course, along with that would be, and I know you're already tracking this, Michelle, and the Finance and Personnel Committee, increase in fees. We have not increased our parking fees for a long time, which isn't a bad place to be. Many cities have removed parking because trying to get people into their downtown area, but we have a pretty vibrant uptown here.
So some numbers have to be crunched.
And right now, revenue from the parking garage per year is,
What did you just say about
It was saying estimated revenue for parking garage, that's the 730 fund, is $279,000.
at our current fees.
Yes.
Right?
Now, is that money that just comes in from the meter, or
smart cards, the
don't we lease some of the
reserve
spots out?
lots? Pardon me?
Don't we lease some of the spots out to the county?
We do. Those are
Okay.
included. Those fees would increase as well. But it's only for, it's a proprietary fund, so it's only the parking garage.
You can only spend it.
Right.
Does our cell tower lease go into that mix as well?
Yes. I forget how much that is offhand, but very little, what, 15,000 a year or something like that, 20,000 a year. We should go back and renegotiate both of those for the footprint as well as the, actually, it has a percentage increase per year for both towers. I don't know if we wanted to up that, and the way I think it was calculated at the time was by the footprint of the tower and how many parking spaces were being consumed by it. But I imagine we could go back and look at that.
I think it's more like a little over 36,000 a year
36.
between the two.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But these are all the numbers that we,
But that's within the 279,000
Yes, it is.
estimated
It's not
revenue per
additional.
year. Okay. So we're looking at needing legislation to authorize this, and then to borrow money, and then to begin design engineering for it.
So we have several weeks here to try to crunch all these numbers and get this.
We do.
if we can, it just gets a little more aggressive to meet the February 15th date. So it's up to council on how many readings they feel they'll need and what have you. But I understand we do need some time in terms to work the finances, so.
Something else to keep in mind is, the time crunch with, who's going to be in the parking garage, who's going to be utilizing it, better times to be in there and having construction going on, repairs. And so there's a strategic component to having this take place as well.
We're going to lose revenue that
Yes,
way.
for every floor that you are working on. And again, this started with, realize concrete spalling off the side of the building and coming down. So we had, there's a concern. It's a safety concern.
Well, I'm parked over there right now. Am I okay?
I think you need to ask
couldn't tell you. I haven't looked at
As
the
long as we're
currently.
not under one.
I'm getting concerned here.
Only in yourself. We do appreciate the report and the concerns that you shared in the report in terms of what issues need to be addressed fairly quickly.
And in terms of footprint, I know some of that back end, the southeast corner is on OU property still. And we still have water issues within the elevator that would have to be addressed. I assume that was, you
That's
did that.
included in
Okay,
this
good.
stormwater.
That's always been a concern of mine, the fountain that's under there or something.
Well, and I would also say that we do lease, the telecommunications groups do lease from us, and there has been some, with those additions to the top, we need to probably look at how we manage that better in the future.
And
There's a couple issues caused by some of the work they've done up there that we need to
Right.
address, talk to George about.
Right.
And if you really want to get, and if we have any extra money left over, we could always add the Essence of Athens motif on it, right?
Oh.
You don't seem to be enthusiastic about it.
Okay, any further questions for our consultants?
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. I mean, sure, this is an expensive project, but also when you look at it, and with proper preventive maintenance moving forward, you know, as we've discussed, having a checklist to where these are annual things, semi-annual issues that need to be addressed and looked at. We're talking about an expensive project, but extending the life by, you know, 25, maybe even 35 years, as long as you're, you know, you are thoughtful and careful about looking for problems as they can crop up and would crop up.
I think it can be preserved. If letting it go is just going to accelerate the corrosion, and it makes it a dangerous situation. That when concrete's falling off there, you can't really use it. It's unsafe condition. So.
Well, and then as you talked about the corrosion of the structural pieces that hold the building up. I know this isn't kind of putting me on the spot here, but if we were to build a new parking garage, what would the city of Athens be looking at?
Well, we looked at that. The average price is about $17,500 per car.
Per car?
Per parking space is the national average from a reputable construction company. They put out an annual of all the cities across the country, the big cities, and Cleveland matches that exactly, about 17.5 spot. I think there's 370. I calculate about $6.5 million for that garage.
That sounds about right. I think the last time I heard a number was about 15 to 12, and that was about 4 or 5 years ago. It was in context of the parking lots versus parking garages. You basically move the decimal point over.
There's some special issues there because of the tight space, whether you'd be able to use the extra room that you're kind of encroaching on the university property. You got the demolition cost of that thing in the middle of town. You've also got to deal with foundations. It is on a piling system. Hopefully we could reuse those piling to and then augment that as needed depending on what the design would be. But you'd also be meeting all the new code requirements and everything else as well, which is good and bad. But hopefully
Well, and your $6.5 million does not include the cost of demolition.
No, it does not. No, that's just for a new garage.
Okay. No further? Jennifer?
Well, I would just comment that lest the mayor labor under the misconception that we're not excited about the Essence of Athens project, I am certainly excited about the prospects of upgrading our parking garage look to be more attractive. But certainly, you know, right now I'm just absorbing all of this new information as someone who knows very little about infrastructure and elevators and parking garages and such. So I clearly think this is a vital and urgent project that we need to move forward with. And I'm excited to hear the potential inclusion of an electric car charging station. I think that there's potential there for private funding perhaps, or grant funding, that we should certainly, you know, look at that as we move forward with the funding plans. And then certainly, you know, looking into the future, but realizing that the Essence of Athens is not included in the numbers that we're looking at here today. And of course, I'm also concerned about making sure we include permanent and accessible bicycle parking in our parking garage.
Actually, that was one thing we did not discuss at our phone conference. And, you know, any other city that you go to now, they have bike parks, car park, you know, whatever, sections for bicycles. So, again, that's giving up a parking space or a few, but it is something to consider maybe in the overall plans. Okay. Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Be safe on your travels. Thank you. Anything else from the administration on this matter?
No.
Not on this one.
Okay. So the next item we have for tonight is our taxi cab ordinance. It's come to our attention recently that we need to put in additional wording in terms of the operation of our taxi cabs in our city. We've looked at what Columbus, Ohio is doing, and our law office has reviewed that. And the administration wants to add to that, we need to change some wording.
It's really a cleanup. It actually, of course, this often happens, is the result of an incident that occurred in the city, who a taxi cab driver was not licensed under our taxi cab board regulations because claimed he was just transporting outside the city, but was inside the city. We can only govern those, that occurs within or originates in the city, as it were. And because of this seeming loophole, that police chief, who oversees taxi cab, the licensing each taxi cab person who have to go through the process. We had a discussion today. What is the name of that?
Uber.
Which doesn't seem to have any sort of vetting or background checks or what have you, whereas we require that here. So the change is to add the language, taxi cab means any motor vehicle whose owner obtains license pursuant to these regulations to operate as a taxi cab. And in addition, the exclusion is changed to all taxi cab regulations apply to taxi cabs operating in the city with a license pursuant to this. They do not apply to companies originating from other jurisdictions. So if you hop in a cab at the Columbus Airport because you don't want to wait for the go bus and come in, they are outside of our purview. But anything that is licensed within the city, they all have to have licensed drivers. And I think that's about it. So it's like 3 sentence changes.
Then I don't understand why it needs to be cleaned up. I mean, obviously, if a cab comes down from Columbus and drops me off and goes back to Columbus, why would there be any problem?
That's not the point.
Okay, what is the point?
The point is that if somebody says, if we find a taxi cab operating in the city that is not licensed driver, you can say, I'm really not operating in the city. I'm coming from the city outside the city, and therefore the taxi board, the taxi regulations do not apply to me. Even though the company may be inside the city.
They are inside the city.
They are inside the city. They're saying, this is the same problem we're having with the Numberfest, I believe, at one point, where the people would be carting people outside the city. So we have a series of pickup trucks transporting people from point A to point B, but because their destination, one of those 2 points is outside the city, they do not fall under our jurisdiction. Does that make sense? So we're trying to tighten it up.
Bring it in.
So this brings it, so if they go from A to B outside, they're still within our...
They still have to be licensed as taxi cab drivers.
Anytime you travel within the city of Athens, you have to follow a certain code is what we're asking for.
Yeah.
So that's going to put sort of like a crunch on Numberfest then, isn't it? All those...
We started that
$5
last
ride,
year. We started
$10
that
for a
last
cab.
year. It just, they got a little bit overrun. I think we did a better job with it last year by pulling over those vehicles that were overcrowded and hanging on safety issues. But no, it's...
But okay, but with this, they have to be licensed to do that then?
Taxis always have. But
No, I'm saying...
Talk about the pickup truck.
I'm talking about a pickup truck or a bus, but anyway,
Do you know the logistics of trying to track down and stop all those people? Have you been on Union Street during...
Right. I'm not arguing that at all.
I know.
It'd be that.
One step at a time.
Okay.
I have a question. It doesn't directly pertain to the language of this ordinance, but I'm just curious because I know little about the licensure process for taxi cabs, and I'm wondering what is included in that. Do we include any kind of education about looking out for our pedestrians and bicyclists in the city? Because that's something that I think, it's important and vital to the safety of people who are getting around and using other modes of transportation.
I would state that that's all governed by the BMV. They have to have a license, a valid license to operate as a taxi cab. And then in addition, when they apply for their taxi cab license, they get the criminal check. That's a word, background check. So.
And they probably would lose their license if they ran over pedestrians haphazardly.
Right, but there is a difference between running over a pedestrian and endangering pedestrians and bicyclists through dangerous driving habits.
I can tell you that our fine officers in blue are checking taxi cab operators and general public drivers as well, so on a regular basis. Thank you. Sure.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so we'll move forward with legislation on that next week. And I do believe that we will do an emergency clause with that.
He has asked for it to be, yes, so that it could be enacted as soon as possible.
Okay, and I apologize for my coughing. We have some exciting news for those that follow our Athens public transit system. We have a date for when we will be able to open our new route and expansion on a couple routes. So Route 5, so let me start out with the date. February 2nd is what Michael Lockman is stating. We do have a new bus as well that's been wrapped and is being utilized. So Route 5, currently, its hours, I'm just going to give you the new hours. It is expanding from 7:30 to 7:30. And Route 6, which is the new route, which will be going out to Chansey and then looping back in through town by Job and Family Services, is 7 to 7. So again, this was part of the Access to Work program, and utilizing, we are moving out into the county with our Athens Transit, but we feel like for those people who utilize, and we believe will increase the utilization on these routes to get to some of the necessary places they need to get to, be it medical, be it jobs. We've heard over the time that the hours did not really reflect what people's job schedules were. So these two new route changes hopefully will do that.
Yeah. And we've, of course, put down 20,000 as a match. Job and Family Services put down to 25 as the level that's needed. We'll give this a year. We'll have to have a dialogue and see if there's other stakeholders who want to participate and pony up some money. So, again, this is starting off, as I say, February, so we'll see how well it works.
So as another addition to that, which is another positive, innovative new advance, with most people having, a lot of people having smartphones, we've instituted a something called the double map, which allows you to use your smartphone, if you have the app on your phone, to go and find where the bus is at any given time. And you can see the bus. We had a example of this at our transportation advisory meeting on Friday, and you can actually see the bus moving. So on a cold or a rainy day, you can stay enclosed somewhere or walk, if you walk from wherever you are, and it gives you an estimated time of when the bus will actually arrive at that particular stop. So it's quite exciting.
I had a chance to use that. I was in the plains taking the bus. I took the bus home from there. And of course, it was cold. This was about a little bit more than a month ago while they were still doing the beta test. Occasionally, the bus would fall off the map, I'll tell you that, but it would show up again. It gave me an opportunity to hang out at the Plains Library and grab a few books. But at the same time, it would help the anticipation of people to schedule around the bus service, and therefore hopefully make it more effective.
So we did watch it on Friday for quite a while, and it was operating through all that time. So maybe they've worked through the glitches since
I
we
think
used
so,
it.
probably so.
So that's another exciting advancement for our bus system. One other item tonight is that we have a bus with the new bus that's been brought online. We no longer are needing a service, in need of service for a particular bus. So we'll have some legislation coming forward to retire that bus. It's been looked over, and I believe that it's not something mechanically that we want to keep in service. So we'll bring some legislation forward to have that bus no longer in need of service.
So that'll be for disposal of the
Dispose of.
And do we know whether we'll be doing it for auction or sealed bid or?
We do not. We have been told that it does not merit retaining. So
You know, a lot of times we just get rid of the metal scrap.
Scrap.
So we put it as a sealed bid. The best way to avoid it would be, sealed bid or, worst case scenario, donation, which we've done, but I don't think anybody really wants to post. We could actually try, going out there shopping. So sealed bid, auction, or whatever you want to do with it. We have various methods out there.
and we can come up with whatever that minimum would be in order to determine whether or not it goes to a scrap heap when it's reused that way or not.
And I believe we have other items that have to be covered eventually too, so.
Yeah, they're gonna be under finance and
finance
personnel.
So there'll be a time to put it all together in one ordinance, I suspect.
Okay, that's all for transportation this evening, unless anyone else has anything else.
I did, I'm sorry. City Engineer Andy Stone brought this up this morning, and it's what we'll be bringing forward, and we need to have a conversation and meeting with you, is ODOT has a pre-qualified process in order to be pre-qualified to bid on ODOT jobs as an engineer, design engineer consultant. He would like to look into doing that. Other cities have adopted the same legislation that gives them that same authority to select from the ODOT pre-qualified.
So you're saying there's a pool of pre-qualified engineers, and he'd like to be able to expedite projects in the future, to be able to have that as an ordinance?
Correct, and as it stands now, we, on our, like Richland South, any of our large projects, they have to be pre-qualified as it is already.
Okay.
So, and we would still go through an interview process and a selection that way, but
RFP.
kind of cuts off a little bit of additional time. And he's going to provide additional information to you, Michelle. So,
All right, thank you.
okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilmember Pappy. We'll now turn to the Finance and Personnel Committee, and this will be chaired this evening by Vice Chair Steve Patterson.
Thank you, Madam President, and again, congratulations.
Thanks.
First off, we have the Athens County Convention and Visitors Bureau that's going to give us a presentation. Executive Director Paige Allost and Jake Sharp are going to be giving us, like I said, an update on where things stand with.
We get books. Thank you, Ms. Page.
Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Thanks.
It's in your tree.
I know Debbie Walker last week sent out the full presentation to you. We've added a couple of slides to it. We're going to kind of gloss over the things that you already know about us so that we can get to sort of the nuts and bolts of where we are. As you all know, the Athens County Convention and Visitors Bureau receives 35% of the 3% lodging tax that's enacted within the city of Athens. And we have operated on a 3-year contract, and that contract is up for renewal. So that's the process that we're starting tonight. So just to give you a little background on us, you know that we're responsible for promoting Athens County to visitors, leisure travelers, business travelers, and group travelers, those that come from essentially outside of a 50-mile radius of our basic residential area. We promote Athens County in a positive way that creates a positive economic impact so that our city and our county can provide services like new elevators and buses and all those kinds of fun things. Oftentimes, you'll see us referred to as a destination marketing organization. That's sort of the current term for what our typical organizations are. We have retained our CVB status and title because that's how the Ohio Revised Code refers to us. So a lot of times if you read something about a destination marketing organization, same thing. So basically we engage in a lot of marketing efforts in order to promote Athens County. We do a lot of social media, which is how a lot of people know about what we do and the things that are going on in our region. We also operate a very large website, AthensOhio.com. Perhaps you've seen it or used it. It's fun to hear local residents use it, and we realize what a great tool it is in the community. We do a lot of advertising. You'll see some of those examples in some magazines that we participated in this past year. That's just sort of a cross-section, including our 30-mile meal promotion and some just basic recreation promotion that we do for the region. We produce a visitor's guide annually. We operate the 30-mile meal project in partnership with AceNet. We do a series of newsletters to our consumers. Ohio Has It is our group travel partner. This coming week, Jake Sharp, our assistant director, will be attending the AAA show in Columbus. He's promised to wear one of Patty Mitchell's puppets. Yeah, he promised. Yeah, he said he promised, yeah. We actually have 2 of them in our lobby right now, and every time I come down the stairs, it looks like there's people in the lobby. So, we also do a lot of events and festivals, and of course, we provide a lot of local sponsorships through grants and cash sponsorship awards and advertising grants to some of the events that happen here. Some big events, some new events, some small events, some growing events. Really those that present a lot of potential for us to bring both day visitors and overnight guests to us. So there's our visitor guide. We'll have a new one that will come out around the 1st of February. We have those distributed all over the state of Ohio and in the contiguous states as well through some commercial distribution services. AthensOhio.com. We will be launching a new AthensOhio.com site sometime here in the next 30 to 45 days. We've been working with Kevin Morgan Studios on this, and we're very excited about this. This is a great tool for us, and of course you can see we see about 1.6 million hits a month on that site, a little over 30,000 unique visitors. It's fun to track and see where people are watching us. Our most common search terms are the things that we have the least to offer any visitor: haunted Athens. And then, of course, Halloween, always popular year-round as a search term for us. So, but of course, interactive maps, you can find anything from brown eggs to wine to where live music is, so it's a lot of fun. We also send a lot of e-newsletters out. These go to not just our tourism industry partners to let them know what we're doing and opportunities that are coming forth for them, but also people interested in the 30-mile meal. OU parents so that they know the best times to visit, not just the most popular times, but sometimes when it might be a little less expensive and a little easier to get into a restaurant. We do a tremendous amount of social media. Many of you follow us on there. This is a great way for us to continue a conversation with people who aren't in Athens but who have this love of place for Athens that we really don't see in a lot of other communities. And this is a good chance to sort of brag about what it is that makes us special that we really haven't identified, but I can tell you, when we post pictures like the picture of the convo with the cherry blossoms in bloom, people freak out over that. Athens! And it's a great way for us to continue that conversation and put those iconic photographs and images of our town that people recognize immediately. And it reminds them of how important it is for them to come and visit us. So you'll see us across all the social media channels. This is a lot of effort on our part, but we also are really glad to have a lot of great local partners who always post beautiful pictures of Athens. And so we use those as brand ambassadors to continue to tell the story of really what a great community it is. It's one thing when it comes from us, but when it comes from local residents, when it comes from students, when it comes from alums, when it comes from first-time visitors, that reinforces really what a special place this is. You'll also see some advertising. These are some examples of both print advertising, which you see in front of you, and some digital campaigns as well. Some of the things that we promote digitally will include a lot of the festivals and events that happen. So you'll see in the upper corner there, Discover the 25 Gifts of Athens. This was our Shop Athens campaign that ran over Christmas time. We actually did 2 separate digital campaigns with 2 separate companies, and they both performed almost identically. Our videos and 15-second pre-roll commercials had over 3,000 complete views where people turned up the volume and listened. That's pretty impressive. That's a click-through rate of almost 3%. Normal click rate is about 0.02%. So the results from that were fantastic. And it really clues us then that it lets us know that people are really interested in the products that we have to offer here, those unique retail items that you can only get in Athens that really represent our community so well. We do a lot of public relations. We work with a contractor in Columbus called Inspire PR. They've done a wonderful job for us. This coming year, we'll be working with them again to promote the 30-mile meal and looking at some of those unique things that we do. So definitely Quilt National for this year. Definitely the Pawpaw Festival and the Pawpaw Identity for Athens, which is very, very big for us and definitely growing. And this gets us what we call earned media. This is advertising that we don't have to pay for. It's more credible, and we're looking forward to more regional and national exposure for those things that do make us unique. We do partner with the Ohio Division of Tourism. As you may be well aware, they are undergoing a brand change, and we expect that to be coming out sometime here in the next several months.
Is this the brand?
This is the current brand. This is the Ohio brand. And they have actually sort of steered clear of the heart of it all approach that they used for many, many, many years. They moved to more of a campaign style that was too much fun for just one day. So a lot of the commercials that you see about the state of Ohio, including what will be on TV tonight, I'm sure, include the too much fun for just one day. And what the Division of Tourism is attempting to do is to move into a much stronger brand that really describes the sort of hipness that is really happening in Ohio. Great Midwest stories that are happening, especially with regards to food, beer, wine, and the arts, all those things that really, in my opinion, originated that spirit of Athens here. So we're telling a great story that goes along with what we hope they're going to tell about the entire state of Ohio. So we did release an economic impact report earlier this year. I know all of you got that. It was a lengthy report, but from a state standpoint, tourism generates about $38 billion in sales each year. That was from 2013. The state conducts the study every year. We conduct the study at the county level every other year. So our most recent numbers come from 2013. And it definitely is a growing industry. A lot of people don't recognize it as an industry because it's so segmented. But they do record over 400,000 jobs in the state of Ohio being tied to tourism. Key themes for us, definitely hotel demand continuing to grow, hotel rates growing. We're seeing that here locally as well. State sales tax revenue from the lodging industry grew 10% in 2013. We're seeing that same thing happen here. So as our hotel rates go up locally, it also increases the amount of sales tax we're able to capture, not just the lodging tax, but the amount of sales tax that we're able to capture. So the longer and more often we can command a higher rate, the more sales tax we're able to create for our local economy. This is what it looks like statewide for spending by the sector. And it's interesting, statewide, transportation is the most important thing as far as visitors' expenditure. And that's just how they're getting here and how they're getting around once they're here. That doesn't affect us a whole lot because we don't have a major airport and we don't have major tourism transportation infrastructure like a railway or a train or a giant bus system. It's just not necessary for us. There's only a few entrance points into our region and a few exit points into our region, and most people get here by car or by bike or by motorcycle. You'll also see food and beverage making a very large showing in that because we deal with so many day visitors in the state of Ohio. Food and beverage always command some of the highest dollars. But when we look at it from the Athens County standpoint, in 2013 we generated $139.1 million in total tourism sales for Athens County. This was up from $130.5 million in 2011. So we grew about $9 million in 2 years. Okay, for our little town, recently ranked one of the poorest counties in America, this speaks to me. This tells me that there is what in our office we call staggering opportunities for growth. We're not done with this. We're still running with this. There's still opportunities and money for us to make in this particular industry. You also see there, it generates a certain amount of wages and taxes. And right now we employ about 2,000 people locally that are engaged directly in the tourism economy. Okay, so what do visitors spend their money on once they're actually here in Athens County? It's a little different than what the state shows us. Our retail trade is our number one activity for visitors. And we love that because that is our primary way of generating sales tax. We love it. Food and beverage arrives second, lodging is third. This speaks to the fact that about 80% of our visitors are actually day visitors and don't stay overnight at all. So when you realize that our third tier here of expenditures comes from 20% of our guests, you realize that, again, more opportunities for growth there in commanding those overnight stays. You'll see some other things listed in there. Recreation is always one of the things that we promote the most, but it typically creates the least amount of economic impact because it's free, it's open to the public all the time, multiple entrance and exit points. It's like trying to quantified the importance of the bikeway to us. While it's open 24 hours a day, it's free. You can get on and off the bikeway and multiple. It's hard to tell if are you local, are you a visitor? How many times do you use it? Do you use it for biking or running? So it's hard sometimes with recreation to really quantify what the economic impact of that is. But we continue to know that it's a primary draw for us that allows us then to leverage that draw into the retail trade and into the food and beverage expenditures. So that's sort of how we approach it. Okay, so let's get to the numbers. Currently, the Athens County Convention and Visitors Bureau, and historically, I think since the beginning of our contract with the city in 1988, we've received 35% of the quarterly lodging tax that the city collects. So the city has a 3% tax. The county has a 3% tax. Okay, most of the lodging within Athens County does lie within the city limits of Athens. So the income for what the city receives and their total intake and lodging tax is roughly equal to what the county takes in as well. There are a couple of bed and breakfasts and cabins that lie outside of the city of Athens that adds an additional amount into that county tax. But looking at what we receive from the city, this gives you an idea of over the course of our last contract, 2012, 2013, and 2014, you can see how that lodging tax, that 35%, has grown. And what you'll see on the spreadsheet that I gave you is tracking that lodging tax income by the city and the county, by the quarter, by the year, since the beginning of information that I have. It doesn't go all the way back to 1988, but we keep the spreadsheet and I look at it on a regular basis so that we can see what the trends look like. You can see we had a very, very strong year last year. And we're looking forward to another very strong year this year. But that 35%, that investment that you make in loaning us that 35% to promote the city of Athens for you and to carry out some of those things, some of those missions and ideas that you have, including projects like the Essence of Athens, which we'll talk about, something that we're going to foster with that in the coming year. You can see how that investment grows, and then you can see how it returns back to you by increased sales tax, increased lodging tax income. But that's essentially how we track it and what it's looked like over the last couple of years. Okay, so here's a snapshot of 2014. We took a total income in, this is our city tax and our county tax, of about $466,179. This was up from about $418,000 that we took in the year before. So a significant growth in the past year. And it's hard to predict that we're going to see that same thing in the coming year, but we feel like we're going to have another strong year. Will it be as strong as last year? We're not sure. Lots of factors combine into that. But we do track this very closely on a quarterly basis, and we also track it alongside the sales tax, which comes into us on a monthly basis so that we can see where our strengths and weaknesses are, where we need to fill in the gaps for the coming year. So you'll see of that, the major portion of what we expend our money on is in programming. We do have some administrative services. Those include things like our insurance for our building, maintaining our building, our copier, all those kinds of fun things that go into that. And then our salaries as well. We do have 2 full-time people on our staff, Jake and I. And we have 2 part-time people on our staff. Linda Watkins, who is our business and operations manager, and Kristen Miller, who is currently our communications manager. And then we also greatly enjoy the services of our 3 OU interns who have done amazing work for us over the course of the last year. Okay, so what's happening in 2015? We are hiring. We are taking the money that we made last year and we're reinvesting it into some additional staff. We need some more warm bodies in our office. So we are currently on a search for a full-time digital content manager to run our website, our social media, and increase our blogging and viral content that we're interested in putting out there. And we're also going to be hiring a part-time visitor services coordinator to really serve as a gatekeeper for us and keep our visitor center open. It's very difficult when you only have 2 full-time people and you operate a visitor center and your job is to be out in meetings and working with people and working with businesses. So we're looking forward to having a lot more coverage there. Again, we have a new website that will launch here in the next 30 to 45 days. Kristen Miller's position is going to evolve into a partnership engagement and development project. She's going to be working more closely with our businesses to help them learn how to engage with the visitor economy. So we'll be taking them through a series of trainings and educational projects that will help them increase their viability with regards to social media, in product development and looking at what visitors want versus what is out there for them to actually spend their money on. Looking at the development of some new events for the year, especially those that are tied to some of our most noted local businesses and sort of the spirit of the community. We'll continue to work with the 30 Mile Meal and expand that brand and do, again, some additional one-on-one training with businesses to foster that brand and to get their products more well-known and appreciated in the community. Additional social media and digital promotion. We'll be moving a lot from print advertising into the digital world, especially after we've seen the response to our Shop Athens campaign over the holidays for what we could spend in that versus what it costs us to be in print. And to be so targeted, to be able to say exactly who we want that digital ad to be in front of. It's a lot wiser use of our funds. I'm very excited, part of the what we talked about with the Essence of Athens project. We will be launching April 15th, the Athens County Open Air Art Exhibition. I'm very excited about this. I know many of us have had this conversation. We have engaged with the Midwest Sculpture Initiative. There's about a dozen communities across the Midwest that will be bringing in leased large public works of art to supplement those works of art that are already here. And this idea was brought to me by a local resident, one of my neighbors, and the Midwest Sculpture Initiative actually appeared in her sister-in-law's community and had been for a number of years. And she said, I would love to see this here. So I picked up the phone and called the guy, and he was like, okay, you have a Deborah Butterfield, you have a Maya Lynn, you have a David Hostetler. Yes, we'll take you. So I thought I was going to have to sell us a little harder than that, but apparently we're pretty awesome when it comes to that kind of thing. And really what it does is it carries forth Bob Winter's thought of we have to really manifest our arts. We have to show. We can't say that we're an arts community and then make you go inside somewhere to see it. So this will bring us about a dozen large-scale public works of art that will be on lease for us for a year. They will be for sale, so we can sell them and receive a commission from them. And they'll be set in locations throughout the city of Athens and the city of Nelsonville, with a few along the bikeway at some strategic locations there as well. We're working with the Municipal Arts Commission and a small committee there to establish the sites and go through the selection process. But most of them, we hope, will be in by April 15th. So we'll be hosting some fun groups, including the return of the National Collegiate Forensics Competition. This will bring about 1,800 arguing college students, because we don't have enough of them, but these are the legitimate ones that will be with us in April. We'll be launching a new geocaching trail sometime in May or June, and then, of course, this is a Quilt National year with lots of other summer events to supplement that, including Ohio Brew Week, Boogie on the Bricks, 30 Mile Meal Month. Bobcat Student Orientation, again in June this year, and then we'll be ramping up with the family weekends and the OU Athletics, which brings us a tremendous number of overnight stays, particularly in the fall and during the month of February for basketball. And then, of course, in December, again, we'll be returning to our hashtag Shop Athens and 25 Gifts of Athens campaign, which we had so much fun with this year. And again, this is our current staff, and we're looking for two new staff members, and it's hard to say when we'll fill those positions, but we are engaged in an active search for those now. And then this is just the general questions that we ask. How can you support tourism in Athens? What other attractions or opportunities would you like to see in Athens? And then, that may be the end of it. No, Athens County is awesome, but how can we make it awesomer, which is our favorite word to use in the office. And it really speaks to the investment that the city of Athens and that the county has continued to make in tourism that I think has really paid off for us. We have a very unique identity in the tourism marketplace. There's still a lot of opportunity for us to do things. One of the things that, a strength that Jake Sharp brought to us and his addition to our office is in developing the group tour market. So when we take our identities that relate to food and art and music and beer and wine, what does that look like for the new group tour market to bring people in mass in groups of 20 or 30 to learn, to explore, to sample, to stay overnight, to have a retail experience. And so we'll be, again, working with a lot of local partners to bring them through that process here in the coming year. So that's where we are. There's a lot more I could tell you, but maybe you have questions.
I have a comment. I'm a little disappointed that you didn't mention 2016, so I'm going to embarrass you a little bit in a good way. it should be noted that Paige Ost was one of the heavy lifters for putting together the reapplying for a bid to have the International Town Gown Association come here to Athens, which should bring in somewhere between 200, 250 municipality officials, university officials, administration, faculty. It's currently this year going to be in Washington, D.C., and again, just to throw that out there. So again, another hat that Paige wears, that she was instrumental in putting this document together, which was beautiful, which was commented on, I should share that as well, by the ITGA Executive Director, Beth Bagwell, said that this was a textbook bid as it came forward. So again, thank you.
When do we know if we get the bid?
We will know in February.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a deadline to meet on Friday.
Yes, we do.
Yikes.
And it's clear that, again, that that tourism dollars revenue has shown a steady increase here in southeastern Ohio, and in particular Athens, and that your office has had a large part to do with that 30-mile meal and everything else going on. So clearly we'll be talking and discussing about the contract renewal, which will include these 2 new positions.
Yes.
I would just like to comment that I think in this type of office, having a vision is very important. And whenever I've sat here now for 3 years, but when you come to us and present your yearly report, there's always a vision. I loved the December with the gifts of Athens. I thought that was wonderful because there was a couple gifts I needed to purchase. And when that popped up, I was like, oh, and I went through all of them. So those kinds of visionary things I think are really important in terms of selling, and you have to continue to do that. Right. You know, you can't, because, you know, some places, like you said, in the heart of it all, it was like, okay, how many years are we going to listen to that or see that? So I think it's an ongoing kind of visionary process. So I'm sure the brainstorming must be fun in your office.
It's a very fluid environment in our
very
office.
Fluid,
Please stop by and visit us anytime. But no telling what you'll hear when you come in.
If we need to be involved in some brainstorming.
Yeah, and I think what helps us is that we work in a very creative community, which means that we have people who are willing to take their small amount of resources and apply them into something spectacular. You know, Patty Mitchell is a great example of that. I had a chance to visit with her yesterday before she left to go to Alaska for 5 weeks to work in another community to do what she's created here. And it's those people that take small resources and they do something so spectacular that you just wonder what goes on inside their head, you know. But those are the things that give us one of the most unique, images in the entire state of Ohio, definitely within the Midwest. And, you know, our goal is to figure out how we tell that story accurately and authentically. So.
And keep telling it.
And keep telling it.
So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just a comment and a question. Yes, thank you very much for all the hard work and plans and visions for the future. And just as we sat here, you know, we had the Transportation Committee meeting, and so we were talking about Athens Transit, and now we're talking about Visitor and Convention. And I wondered if there have been any linkages, and there quite likely are, with the Go Bus and with the Athens Transit, and kind of building maybe even more of a connection with the Ohio University students and them getting out in the community. I know you've done a lot of advertising about what to say, but also then the thought that day trippers come in here for just a day, that Go Bus is making trips between Columbus.
Right. And there is some conversation that's gone on with the Go Bus, especially event-oriented things like during Brew Week. But part of our challenge is that we can control what happens when a visitor gets here, but it's where they catch that bus at, you know, where they begin their journey at, and the logistics that it takes them to catch the Go Bus there to get here. Mm-hmm. Sometimes transportation can be difficult for visitors when they get somewhere if they haven't pre-planned. And because we're not a huge metropolitan area, the growth in the transportation system here, the local transit system, is huge for a visitor that would come into us on the Go Bus. There's certainly a lot of planning that would have to take place to ramp that up and grow it. But again, it's an opportunity that as you grow your services, Like any service that a city builds, any infrastructure that a city builds, our job is to look at it and figure out how we leverage that for additional dollars and for additional visitors to use. So, we keep the bus schedules in our office. You'll be surprised how many people come in our office and think we're the Go Bus office, which is always fun because we get a minute to talk with them. But definitely keeping those bus schedules on, and then working with the events and working with the Go Bus crew to sort of stay in tune with what they're doing and try and match those services up. It's something we could do better. It's a definite opportunity, especially as your services grow. But part of the challenge is that we can't control the logistics on the front end of how someone gets to us. So sometimes there's a challenge in that. We can make it easy once they get here. So
I think that's an important piece, because as any of us who have traveled in Europe or other places, there's always that place you go, and then they disseminate all the information, and then you go out from there.
right. But a great example is, dealing like with Space University that's coming in this summer. So we'll have, some of the world's leading rocket scientists that will be here for about 9 weeks over the course of the summer, staying on campus. Many of them will be flying into the Port Columbus Airport, and we're working with them to try and determine what that navigation process looks like and how they get from there to here. So is it going to be through the Go Bus, through a series of shuttle services? So there's a business travel component that's probably more closely linked to the Athens Transit Service and the Go Bus than a leisure traveler would take at the moment. But there's still some opportunities there, to move forward with, definitely. Thank you.
Member Butler.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Paige, for your presentation. I want to say that I appreciate your professionalism and responsiveness. Anytime I've had to ask questions or reach out or been in meetings with you or Jake, I really appreciate your guys' knowledge and expertise in this. And it's evident again tonight in your knowledge in marketing. And again, as we're all ambassadors of the community, and I think you guys are super at what you do. You mentioned in the presentation that hotel demand is growing 1.4%, I believe. And I know that I believe you attended a conference about B&Bs in Columbus not so long ago. Any thoughts on that? Or I know you're not prepared for this.
Oh, no, it's quite all right. The growth is national, and what we're seeing is a rebound from the recession where people just didn't travel. They just took a day trip somewhere and they didn't stay overnight. So what we're seeing is a growth in not just people staying overnight, but what that actual rate looks like. And so we've been able to command a higher rate. Where the bed and breakfasts fit into that, especially within the city of Athens, is that it offers an alternative to the hotel stay. And a lot of people expect when they come to a historic community like Athens and a college town like Athens, they expect to have the B&B experience. You can go to Nelsonville and have a top-rate, first-class B&B experience. Yeah. No hotels there, though. And in Athens, it's the exact opposite. So we do have some cabins and bed and breakfasts that are in the outlying areas. That do a fantastic job, but people always ask us, especially for those peak weekends, people are looking for something that is close into the uptown area, that's walkable to Court Street, and that has that B&B experience. So that's definitely something on the development side, particularly for City Council to look at over the course of the next year or so.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Member Paul.
I want to say thank you for your presentations are always very informative and great pictures and stuff. I think I want to challenge both the City Council, the administration, and you to identify things where we can put our energy together to identify areas where City Council can directly affect what's going on. Bed and breakfasts, I think, is that has a lot to do with our code and those sort of issues. Something that I think needs to be re-emphasized is, you sell the beauty and the recreation of Athens and Athens County. I think it's very important that as administration and City Council, we make sure that that resource is protected. And people kind of question sometimes why we get nature grants, or we want to expand the trails, the bike trails, or we get a piece of property donated to us, or we go out to get a grant to get one. And I think you provide the perfect example of how it's directly tied to economic development.
Right.
Or where you
And-
place your trash can.
Yeah, I mean, and that all has to do with economic development and the vitality of our community. And so when we complain about certain things that need to be changed in code and such, this is one of the prime examples of why we are trying to do some of the things we're doing. So
I think
I'd
that's
like
well
to, get together and look at specific, some goals, specific steps that as council and administration we can take. I think bed and breakfasts are a really good one. Maintaining the infrastructure, bikes and pedestrian infrastructures, those sort of things.
I believe you also sit on the Rec Advisory Board.
I do.
And so I appreciate the fact that you are on that board, because I think that brings a different, maybe to some folks who are maybe a little bit more, narrow in their focus, but you can talk about the economic development. You have the numbers related to tourism, and I think that's an important piece, that having that community center there is a really important aspect of our community.
It's like the conversation about the essence of Athens. When you're going to make an investment in something that the city needs, then make it in such a way that really carries forth the spirit of your community and gives you something to leverage into something that will create some sales tax revenue, some overnight stays, some day trippers, some overnighters, some media stories, all those kinds of things. So you have to look at all of those opportunities when you're given an opportunity like building a new pool or repairing your parking garage. Wouldn't you love to turn an artist loose with those cars inside the elevator there? And I just think that would just be really cool. So, but yeah, and I will say it's wonderful to work with a city and a county, both in Athens and Nelsonville, and our county commissioners who are so open to crazy ideas. I think crazy ideas are the spirit of what moves Athens forward. And it's crazy ideas that sort of give us that unique identity. So I appreciate the support and the willingness to sort of take on what we think we might want to do. So, anything else?
Any other comments, questions? Great. Thank you
Sure.
very much.
Thank you.
So there'll be more to come on that, the renewal of that contract, which did expire December 31st, I believe, 2014, but it'll be retroactive once it comes into play.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The second thing we have on our agenda is the 2015 budget, where we need to amend that budget. We're talking about ordinance 120-14. There's a lot to this particular piece of legislation, and to not provide disservice to this, I will describe kind of in a nutshell. A lot of what we're going to be doing, or what will be moving forward, are increases or decreases in the unappropriated balances to more accurately reflect planned expenditures as we move forward. There's several sections within this, but there will be a lot of decreases. I'll go through the decreases first. There will be decreases in the Clerk of Court's computer fund by $30,000, in-house arrest fund, which is $233,000, decreasing it by $3,000. Law enforcement fund decreased by $5,000. Drug enforcement fund decreasing by $10,000. Capital improvement fund $580,000 will be decreasing by $100,000. A couple of these will be decreasing that I'm going to describe in a minute, but they'll also be increasing in other accounts. The water maintenance fund will be decreasing by $65,000. The sewer maintenance fund will also be decreasing by $65,000, as will be the grant fund $589,000, which will be decreasing by $1,235,000. Increases for planned expenditures will be water maintenance fund and the sewer fund, two separate accounts, but those will be increasing by $65,000. The grant fund $580,000, TC 500 will increase by the $1,235,000, as well as an increase in the CDBG grant fund $248,000, which will be increasing by $334,000. There will also be some increases, increased appropriations of the unappropriated balances, but this is going into, or at least to meet the needs of the medical fund 866, So this is coming from a lot of the separate funds. There's a lot of them under the general funds, coming out of the TC 100s, which is personnel, as well as insurance benefits, rather. I don't know that I need to go through every single item on here, but I will say that for the general fund, it will be an increase in the amount of $244,000 in its total. Service garage fund will increase. Underage drinkers fund will increase. Community corrections fund increase. DUI court, recreation fund, community center fund, parking garage fund. Again, each one of these being separate accounts. The water fund from the different departments. The sewer fund from its different departments. And then finally, there will be a decrease in the appropriations in order to balance the revenues within the medical fund 688, where it'll be decreasing by $500,000.
I can add some to that. Some of the changes have to do with funds that are no longer funded. There's no revenue coming in. Something like the in-house arrest fund and some of the other ones. Some of them are typos, or rather mistakes I made in the process. When you talk about decreasing the grant fund to 598.89 rather by $1 million, that's because I put it in a TC 600 transaction 600 class rather than the 500. Again, this is going towards the bridge on Columbus Road and some of the other projects we have. Some of the other ones, of course, was a miscalculation in terms of the water funds, going from the maintenance side to actually the administration fund lines in the TC 100s for salaries. The section 3 there, where it talks about increasing some of the funds, that's pretty much to cover the medical costs, medical insurance costs. I think the rule of thumb what you do is about sock away about $15,000 per employee to cover it. We've had to up that quite a bit. And the decrease in the $500,000 from that particular fund is because I just stuck a $3.3 million budget in there, and the anticipation is that we wouldn't need that much. So part of it is, again, this is a document that's in progress, and there were pieces that fell through the cracks.
I think on healthcare, is that, from any administration's point of view, kind of a fluid situation sometimes in terms of what you anticipate?
We are self-insured. We have a stop loss. I forget what it is, 1 million, is it? I believe, for persons. But again, it has to do with a lot of the health of our employees. We just had a meeting with a consultant. We've hired a consultant to take a look at some of our efficiencies. They found that we were pretty efficient in terms of UMR, who does our administration of our medical, was pretty efficient in the actual covering of the medical costs, but where it has some deficiencies in their prescription drug plan. They did not meet their specs that they were supposed to. So we have a conversation going with the auditor and probably the law director eventually to say how can we get reimbursements on that. Again, it's been going up slowly. I don't know if Hannah has the numbers from last year, but it's, we're running about $2.5 million or so, I believe, for the medical fund.
Another thing that we often see, and some of you may remember this, is that periodically throughout the fiscal year, we're having to make some adjustments to that particular fund line. Sometimes up, sometimes down. It's also important to mention that when we're talking about increasing 15,000, 16,000, 17,000 per individual, it's not something that's coming straight to the individual. It's coming out of the department itself, to where they're having to adjust their budget to cover those expenditures.
Any questions on that? Okay. And again, it's to reflect what we estimate as resources coming in and dollars coming in. So we're trying to balance it. And again, that's a guesstimate in as well. Pager, knows that, it depends on the, how many hotels are filled up. So if we can do a guesstimate as best we can. And again, a lot of that work comes from the auditor's office, as well as looking at what we need and what is going to happen there.
Okay. I understand we have one miscellaneous.
We have two. One is regarding the disposal of equipment. we have a request for, I don't even know what a gantry is. Can you?
It's a walkway.
Okay.
It's like a gangplank, except it's usually metal and it should have handrails. It's trying to be safe.
We had a request for disposal, meaning could a city employee purchase it, and at the same time, a request from another division on whether or not the employees would have an option to purchase the old computers that had just been changed out in the office. And I believe Councilman Patterson has some ORC language that speaks to that.
I do. This was just sent to me recently. I received a couple different documents here, 3 different chapters or 3 different chapters, basically, sections under the Ohio Revised Code, disposition of property needed, obsolete or unfit for municipal purposes, disposal of excess and surplus supplies, as well as Ohio University's policy, which I'm very familiar with. It's a much different approach to doing things, but anyway, regardless, there is one section under Ohio Revised Code 125-13, disposing of excess and surplus supplies. Under section F, it speaks to the director may adopt rules governing the sales, lease, or transfer of surplus and excess supplies in the director's control by public auction, sealed bid, or negotiation, except that no employee of the disposing agency shall be allowed to purchase, lease, or receive any such supplies.
So I was unaware of this ORC reference, so we will be going back and looking at it. So regarding disposal of those items, if there is deemed a value, we'll just go through the standard process of sale by seal to auction, disposal, whatever we'll bring. A lot of times with our e-waste, we actually store it until we have enough that it goes through the e-waste disposal through the Athens Hocking Solid Waste District. So.
And I believe the gantry is a disposal from the wastewater treatment plant. The rehabbing of it as a gantry, this series of metal and gantry floors on that, I believe.
It's got to be water, right? I don't know. Came from that.
Okay.
From the wastewater treatment plant.
So we'll go back and retool that.
So concerning the disposal of the computers, if I heard you right, then employees would not be eligible to buy or lease or be able to get one.
Based on that ORC reference there, we may send it to the law director's office for review.
And realize most of the time they're usually pretty much played out. We really want to clean the hard drives off. In fact, we usually take the hard drives out.
Well, that's why I was wondering about that, because there's sensitive information there.
They've been wiped.
Yes.
That's the term I got.
And technically, a lot of it is public. I mean, I think there's a lot of this coming out of code. But you're right.
Yeah,
I
you're
understand.
right. I mean, but
yes.
Nonetheless. But believe me, if it's wiped, I could retrieve it.
I think we talk about sledgehammers. What was the other one? Some
Well,
kind
they
of
said
grinder.
screwdriving, through
Drilling.
it, you could still recapture that. So, I mean, yeah.
There was talk
Is
about
anything-
out near Hebbersville, somewhere Cars Lumber, there was actually the security is disposed of sensitive information.
Right.
They have a hard drive shredder, we're told.
Yeah.
So these are we've had this discussion, how to do it right.
Right.
We're aware of the issue about that.
Same thing with copiers, in case you didn't know it.
Copiers?
Yes.
Oh, the memory in it?
Oh,
No,
sensitive
all
information.
photocopiers that we now have, or Xerox machines, use a hard drive. That's where they store the information before they kick it out into the paper. So everything that you have ever copied on a copier, there's a record of it inside that copier. So think about that one. Yeah.
So we're supposed to have a copier demolition derby or something like that?
No, I'm just saying, I'm just putting this out there. Do with the information what you will.
Okay. Last miscellaneous?
Last miscellaneous?
Okay, is that it? Right. Okay, basically I passed out a packet. It's called Retroactive Pay Raise About 2%. I believe you've got a copy of it. The issue I have here is that if you go through it, essentially at the City Council, determines the pay rates for non-union employees. I've cited the section of code 30602 there. I've cited the ORC 731.08. What came to my attention last week of December is that the auditor's office gave a retroactive pay raise to their employees between 3 and 4%. This was done sometime early December. If you go and peruse this to the 4 pages in, you could look at 02614, December 7th, 2012, and 014613 for the 2014 non-union pay increases were at 2%. So the question arises, when is 2% 2%? There's also the third page in, I believe, comes from Pat Lang, the director, law director, saying this was well within the purview because we had shifted the pay ranges up by 2%. And we have eliminated the steps, if you remember, 2 years ago, I believe. So therefore, if they're within that pay range, they can pretty much the supervisor can put whatever numbers in there that they choose, as long as they don't go past the pay range. So I'm a little bit thrown off by this. I would really look towards solutions of saying, and the other portion of the conclusion the law director has is that because we've never addressed retroactivity in terms of pay, we're silent on it, never thought it would be an issue, that this could be done. Again, we stated in the 121-14, 2% increase for this year. So non-union would be getting 2%, 2% this year, 2% last year, and the year before they got 3.5%. The fact that you can, I think of that as at the very most liberal concept, of course, is that you can do merit within your department. In other words, if it's 2%, somebody gets 4, somebody gets 0, if you really want to do that. It's very seldom have we done that because we don't really have a formal evaluation process from department to department. I personally believe she's overstepped her bounds on this. The retroactivity of it is such as that it probably digs into our carryover. You who were on the Finance and Personnel Committee did not have this conversation with her, to my knowledge, previous to her putting out those letters. I have copies of the letters in here, copies of the previous adjustments she made to two of her employees, or in her office, which I have no problem with there. That's a change of position. But the fact is, it makes it very hard to say what is going on with the budget if you can retroactively add a 3 or 4% increase as of last May. It chews into the budget carryover. It means that this year, rather than what we estimated for 2% for the going forward for these parties, it is damaging to the morale of my fellow employees. Because we've had this discussion of trying to do pay compensation. We were going to initiate that this year because of the inequities. We realized that things have gotten out of skew over time. We do our wage evaluation every other year, statewide. So I have a problem with this. Recommendations? Well, I leave this information for you to study. Okay, I would look at the very least I believe as Pat Lang would say, basically is that you have actually given the authority away from you by not doing the steps or something. I'm not sure how that works. I know the pay ranges are really for the purpose of what would you call it? Of actually slotting somebody when they come into the employment. It's not a free-for-all within that pay range. And that's the problem I have with this. If this is legal, I will put forth recommendations for some people who are underpaid retroactively. And again, you can do prior year bills or prior year services. But I think, as you know, the unappropriated balances we received in the general fund for this, as of January this year, is about $36,000. So I don't know how we've already dipped into it. You can see what we just did for the general fund for the medical. I do not know how we fix this problem, except I think the easiest thing would be to actually re-establish I think it's 122, 121, the slotting ranges, and actually put those numbers directly in there. And again, if you want more information, I think I've given you most of the stuff. There's probably other emails and threads that are out there. But again, it's been a back and forth. And as I know, some of the finance and personnel members know about this. And I'll stop there. You wish to add anything?
Regarding personnel, I mean, as Service Safety Director, I'm supposed to oversee the operations of the City of Athens, and the employees, a large majority of employees look to me in terms of heralding their service, championing what they do. We had a number of department heads come to myself and to Jennifer, HR Director, as pretty late in the game, but November-ish, and said, and I think some of council asked, are you looking at parity? Are you looking at what females are receiving in general secretary positions, as an example? And there are a few that are significantly underpaid in comparison in terms of duties and level of work that's assigned to them. So taking the high road, I basically told the HR director, I don't want to do this in a vacuum. I don't want to pick Susie and Joey over here and Jimmy over there. Solid Waste Litter Control Officer was another position. That came out of Code Ad Hoc. Let's wait and do the whole job evaluation prior to instituting where we see some gaps in terms of compensation. And then to have other employees outside, but still, city employees receive 4%, then an additional 2%, essentially a 6% increase in January, effective as of January, if you're to add that retroactivity. That hurts. And that hurts morale. And that hurts, the divisions that are here to work. And I always emphasize, we're all public servants. We recognize that. I'm not in this for glory, money, what have you. The idea is to provide good service, and we try to provide good wages, good health insurance benefits, as you recognize, and for them to be proud, and be proud public servants for the City of Athens. So I'm just saying this has had an adverse effect.
So I want some action on it. If you want to have a conversation on it, we can. I don't think we can go into executive session on this anytime soon. You'd have to ask the law director on that. Take on it. It would be personnel negotiations, but not really of what the sort we usually deal with. But again, it harms what we have to do as an administration. And if I thought this was, as I say, there's a history of how we've done this. The code is clear on who has the authority to do this. If the authority has been lost by you, the way the interpretation is right now, which I disagree with, then I would respectfully ask that you get it back. Any question?
I just have a brief, thank you. I just have a really brief comment, and I appreciate your candidness, both of you. I appreciate your speaking and delivering this to us. And I will heed your words, Mayor, when you asked us to study this and to look into it. So I will do my duty there.
If not, I will put recommendations for retroactive for various employees who require it. I can freewheel as much as any other elected official. I think that's inappropriate for me to do that. But then, I have the morale of my staff and my workers to consider.
Sure. I appreciate that.
Okay.
And I will look in, I'll do my homework. Thank you.
What is our total, outside of that office, the auditor's office, what is our total of non-union? That was
67?
166.
Okay.
Somewhere around there.
166.
166 employees, and how many employees actually received this?
Includes union. I would say non-union.
Non-union.
Non-union
More
is what I meant.
67 to 70.
Okay.
What was-
67 to 70.
Okay, and then
That's somewhere in there.
the amount that was in this particular office that received this retroactive pay?
There's only 4. But when we were discussing the non-union boost, we were estimating with non-union, every 1% was about $47,000 to add to it. So we went with 2%, somewhere in the 94 range. realize 4% would add to it. You know, if I say, let's give everybody 4%, because after all, they work hard too.
Right.
You know, you talk about, you know, maybe, you know, 190,000. If you look at what's going on, though, the retroactivity of that is, you know, is, to me, is suspect to start with. To say that you can actually range within your pay range, you can actually, you know, promote, or rather increase your compensation within that pay range. I don't know if that's
a bit more of a maybe for-profit kind of attitude, like a bonus is what they're. I don't know what the idea was into doing this, but I'm, you know.
You have the letters there.
Right.
You have the dates on the letters that say this is when it was done. I have to assume that if you wanted to clear the books, that would be done that month. So everybody probably got a higher paycheck that particular last paycheck. I don't know. Unfortunately, I really haven't had a conversation with the auditor since started. At least there's been no discussion that I've been able to.
And just so for the timeline, when did this start? When did you know, or when did this come out, or?
I believe we learned that around December 18th or something, memos were sent from the office to the HR director.
Okay.
And the memos are actually dated the 5th. So this would be the first reading of the ordinances. And again, you know, occasionally we have extra money to TC 100s. That doesn't mean you rate it.
There's a lot in this document. I would encourage all of council to look through it carefully. I too respect everything that both of you are saying to us tonight. Finance and personnel will certainly be going through this document, and I also like the suggestion of, if we need to, is to talk with the law director and have an executive session and to explore this further.
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any other?
There are no other items.
And just to let people know that next Monday, the city will be observing Martin Luther King Day. And so we will not be having council meeting on Monday the 19th, but rather Tuesday the 20th. So we will be adjourning now tonight at 8:47 p.m.